The science of motivation. Why do we feel motivated? Have you ever woken up feeling excited about doing something, only to lose that feeling a few hours later? Maybe you wanted to study English, exercise, read a book, or finish an important project. At first, you felt ready. You imagined yourself becoming better and reaching your goal. But then your phone made a sound, a video appeared, or you simply thought, I will do it later. Suddenly, the motivation disappeared. Why does this happen? Motivation is the force that pushes us to start and continue an action. It can make us study when we are tired, practice a skill when it is difficult, or continue working after making a mistake. However, motivation is not a magical feeling that appears whenever we need it. It is connected to our thoughts, emotions, environment, habits, and even the way our brain responds to rewards. Many people believe that successful people are successful because they are always motivated. That is not true. Successful people also feel bored, tired, distracted, and sometimes completely uninterested. The important difference is that they learn how to act even when motivation is low. Think about a student preparing for an exam. On the first day, the student may feel very excited. They buy new notebooks, organize their desk, and make a perfect study plan. This time, I am going to study every day, they say. But after several days, the excitement becomes weaker. The desk is still there, the exam is still coming, but studying does not feel as exciting anymore. This teaches us something important: motivation often starts an action, but it cannot always maintain it. So, what happens inside the brain when we feel motivated? Why can a small reward make us work harder? Why do some goals make us excited while others feel impossible? And most importantly, can we learn to become more motivated? The answers are more interesting than you might expect. Motivation and the brain. To understand motivation, we need to take a small journey inside the human brain. The brain is constantly asking questions: is this useful? Is this dangerous? Will this give me something I want? Should I continue? One important chemical involved in this process is dopamine. People often call dopamine the pleasure chemical, but this description is too simple. Dopamine is strongly connected to motivation, learning, anticipation, and the desire to seek rewards. Imagine that you are playing a game and you know that a valuable reward is coming. Before you receive the reward, your brain becomes interested in what might happen. You want to continue. You want to discover the result. This anticipation can be powerful. The same idea can appear in everyday life. Imagine that you are learning 10 new English words. You study the first few words, then test yourself. You remember them correctly. That small success tells your brain, this is working. You may then want to continue. This is one reason progress can be motivating. However, dopamine does not simply make us happy. It helps the brain notice opportunities and encourages us to take action towards something valuable. That is why the possibility of a reward can sometimes be more motivating than the reward itself. Think about checking your phone. You do not know whether there will be an interesting message, funny video, or exciting notification. Because the result is uncertain, you may check again and again. Your brain is curious about what might happen. This does not mean technology is bad. It means that our brains are naturally attracted to immediate and unpredictable rewards. Now compare this with studying for an exam. The reward may come weeks or months later. The brain has to wait. There is no exciting result every few minutes. This creates a challenge. The human brain often prefers rewards that are close and easy to understand. So, if we want to stay motivated toward a long-term goal, we need to find ways to make progress visible and meaningful. The difference between wanting and doing. There is a strange problem with motivation. Wanting something does not always make us do it. You may really want to speak English fluently, but still avoid practicing. You may want better grades, but spend an hour watching videos instead of studying. You may want to learn a new skill, but keep saying, tomorrow. Why? Because there is a difference between a goal and an action. A goal describes what we want in the future. An action is what we do right now. The brain must connect these two things. Imagine saying, I want to become fluent in English. That sounds exciting, but it is a huge goal. What should you do today? Read a book? Watch a video? Learn vocabulary? Speak with someone? Write an essay? When a goal is too large or unclear, the brain may not know where to begin. The result can be procrastination. Now change the goal. Instead of saying, I will become fluent, say, I will listen to English for 20 minutes today. Suddenly, the action is clear. This is an important principle of motivation. Make the next action easy to understand. You do not need to think about the entire journey every time you start. You only need to know what comes next. A mountain looks enormous when you stand at the bottom and look at the top. But climbing one small section at a time feels different. Motivation often becomes stronger after action begins. You might think, I need motivation before I start. In reality, starting can create motivation. You read one page, and then you want to read another. You solve one problem, and then you feel ready for the next one. You practice a skill for 5 minutes, and suddenly 20 minutes have passed. This is why waiting for the perfect feeling can be dangerous. The perfect feeling may never arrive. Sometimes, the best way to become motivated is simply to begin. Why goals matter. Imagine entering a huge building with hundreds of doors. Nobody tells you which door to open. You walk around, look at different rooms, and become confused. Even if you are energetic, you do not know where to go. Goals give your actions a direction. A goal answers a simple question: what am I trying to achieve? Without a clear goal, motivation can become weak because the brain cannot easily measure progress. If you say, I want to improve, you may work hard but still feel that nothing is changing. But if you say, I want to learn 300 useful English words in 3 months, progress becomes easier to see. Goals can also create a feeling of purpose. When an action has a reason behind it, it can become more meaningful. Think about running. Running for 30 minutes may feel difficult if you have no reason to do it. But imagine that you are training for a race. The same 30 minutes suddenly has a purpose. The activity did not change. Your interpretation of the activity changed. This is important because motivation is influenced by how we think about an action. However, goals must be realistic enough to guide us. If a goal is extremely difficult, we may feel that success is impossible. If it is too easy, we may become bored. A useful goal should challenge you without making you feel completely powerless. There is also another important idea: goals should be connected to something you personally value. Imagine 2 students. One studies mathematics because a teacher told him to. The other studies because she wants to become an engineer and knows mathematics will help her. Both students may study for the same exam, but their reasons are different. The second student has a stronger connection between today's action and tomorrow's dream. That connection can make difficult work feel meaningful. Small goals, big results. Large goals can be exciting, but they can also be frightening. Imagine deciding to write a book. You open a blank document and think, I need to write an entire book. That thought alone may make you want to close the document. Now imagine changing the goal. Today, I will write 300 words. Suddenly, the task feels possible. This is the power of small goals. Small goals reduce the mental pressure of starting. They create frequent opportunities for success, and success can encourage more action. Suppose you want to improve your English listening. Instead of saying, I will understand every English speaker, choose a smaller target. Listen for 15 minutes today. Tomorrow, listen again. Then write down 5 new expressions. After a month, you may discover that you have completed many small actions. The interesting thing is that small actions can produce large changes when repeated. Think about a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it is tiny. But as it continues moving, it can become much larger. Human progress can work in a similar way. There is another benefit to small goals: they help create evidence that you can improve. When you complete a small task, you prove to yourself that action is possible. This can build confidence. Confidence is not always something you need before starting. Sometimes confidence is something you create by starting. A person who says, "I cannot do this," may be looking at the final result instead of the next step. So ask yourself a different question: what is the smallest useful thing I can do right now? Maybe it is reading one page. Maybe it is solving one problem. Maybe it is practicing for 10 minutes. Small does not mean useless. Small means repeatable. And repeated actions can become powerful. The power of progress. Have you ever worked on something for a long time and suddenly noticed that you are much better than before? Maybe your English listening was difficult 6 months ago. Now you understand conversations that once sounded impossible. Perhaps you could not solve a certain type of mathematics problem, but after enough practice, it became familiar. That feeling of progress is one of the strongest sources of motivation. Humans like evidence that their effort is producing results. When we can see improvement, continuing becomes easier. But progress is not always obvious. Imagine learning a language. During the first week, you may learn many new words. During the next month, improvement may feel slower. You might think, "I am not getting better anymore." But your brain is still learning. You may be understanding grammar more quickly, recognizing common expressions, or noticing sounds that you could not hear before. This is why tracking progress can help. You can keep a simple notebook. Write down what you learned today. At the end of the week, look back. You may be surprised. Progress also does not need to be perfect. If you understand 60% of a conversation today and 65% next month, that is still progress. The problem is that people often compare their current level with their final dream instead of comparing it with their previous level. Imagine climbing stairs. If you only look at the top floor, you may feel far away. But if you look behind you, you can see how many steps you have already climbed. That is why motivation is often stronger when we measure progress against ourselves. You do not need to become amazing overnight. You only need to become a little better, then repeat. When goals become stressful. Goals are useful, but they can also create pressure. Imagine telling yourself, "I must get the highest grade." At first, this goal may motivate you. But after some time, every small mistake may feel like a disaster. You study, but instead of thinking about learning, you think about failure. This can reduce motivation. Why does this happen? Because the goal has become connected to fear instead of growth. There is a difference between wanting to succeed and believing that you must succeed perfectly. Healthy motivation allows mistakes. It says, "I want to improve, and I will keep learning." Unhealthy pressure says, "If I make a mistake, I am a failure." These two ideas may lead to very different experiences. Imagine learning to play chess. If you believe every lost game proves that you are bad at chess, you may become frustrated and stop playing. But if you see each game as information, losing becomes useful. You can ask, "What did I miss?" That question changes failure into feedback. The same principle works in school, languages, sports, music, and almost every skill. Goals should give you direction, not destroy your confidence. It is also helpful to remember that motivation naturally changes. Some days will be productive. Other days will be slower. That does not mean your entire plan has failed. A person who expects perfect motivation every day will probably become disappointed. A person who expects ups and downs can continue. So set goals, but leave space for mistakes, rest, and unexpected problems. The goal is not to become a machine. The goal is to keep moving forward. Motivation versus discipline. There is a popular idea that motivation is everything. But if that were true, nobody would ever work on difficult tasks when they were tired. The truth is that motivation and discipline are different. Motivation is the desire to act. Discipline is the ability to act even when desire is weak. Imagine a student who studies only when excited. Some days, the student studies for 3 hours. Other days, nothing happens.
Now imagine another student who studies for 30 minutes every evening, even when the session feels ordinary.
The second student may make more progress over time. Why? Because consistency is more reliable than emotion. This does not mean motivation is useless. Motivation helps us choose goals and begin new activities.
But habits and routines help us continue.
Think about brushing your teeth. You probably do not wake up every morning and ask, "Am I motivated to brush my teeth today?" You simply do it. The action has become a habit.
Good habits reduce the amount of mental energy required to make decisions. Instead of asking, "Should I study today?" you create a routine. After dinner, I study for 30 minutes.
The decision is already made. This can be extremely useful because every decision requires attention.
If you make hundreds of decisions about when and how to work, you may become mentally tired before you even begin.
A simple routine removes some of that difficulty. The goal is not to eliminate motivation.
It is to make progress possible even when motivation changes.
Motivation can be the spark. Discipline can keep the fire alive. How habits are built. Habits often begin with a simple pattern. Something happens, you perform an action, and then you receive some kind of result.
For example, you hear your phone notification, pick up your phone, and discover a new message.
The result gives your brain a reason to repeat the behavior. Good habits can use the same basic idea. Suppose you want to read more. You could place a book beside your bed.
Every night, after brushing your teeth, you read 2 pages.
The first step reminds you. The action is small. The routine repeats.
Eventually, the action may feel natural.
This is why your environment matters so much. If your phone is beside you while you study, distractions are easy. If your book is already open on your desk, starting may be easier. Your environment can either support your goals or fight against them.
Imagine trying to study in a room full of notifications, games, loud sounds, and other distractions.
You might believe that you simply lack discipline. But perhaps the environment is creating unnecessary difficulty. Small environmental changes can make good behavior easier. Put your study materials where you can see them. Prepare what you need before beginning. Reduce unnecessary distractions. Create a clear place for focused work. These actions may seem boring, but motivation is not always about exciting tricks. Sometimes it is about removing obstacles. A good habit should be easy enough to repeat. If your plan is extremely complicated, you may stop following it. Start small. Repeat.
Then slowly increase the difficulty.
Over time, the behavior becomes less dependent on motivation. The 2-minute start. Sometimes the hardest part of a task is the first few minutes. You look at a textbook and think, "This is going to take forever." You look at a large project and think, "Where should I even begin?"
One useful strategy is to make the beginning extremely small.
Tell yourself, "I will do this for 2 minutes."
You do not need to promise yourself an entire hour.
Just 2 minutes. Open the document. Read the first paragraph. Solve the first question. Listen to the first minute of the lesson. Why can this work? Because starting removes uncertainty. Before you begin, the task exists mostly in your imagination.
Your brain may imagine it as difficult, boring, or exhausting.
After starting, you have real information. You discover what the task is actually like. Often, 2 minutes becomes 10 minutes. 10 minutes becomes 20.
The important thing is that the barrier of starting has disappeared. This strategy does not mean every task must be completed in 2 minutes.
The purpose is simply to begin. Think about pushing a heavy object. The first movement may require more effort than keeping it moving. Work can feel similar. Starting can be the hardest part.
So the next time you find yourself saying, "I do not feel motivated," try changing the question.
Do not ask, "How can I finish everything?" Ask, "Can I start for 2 minutes?" That small question may change your behavior.
And once you are moving, continuing often becomes easier.
Making good habits attractive. Our brains naturally pay attention to things that are interesting, rewarding, or emotionally meaningful. So, what if we make useful habits more attractive? Suppose you want to practice English listening.
You could listen to a subject you find boring, or you could choose topics that genuinely interest you.
If you enjoy science, listen to a simple English video about space. If you enjoy sports, listen to a story about an athlete.
If you enjoy technology, listen to a podcast about inventions. The language practice remains useful, but the subject gives your brain another reason to continue.
This is an important idea. Learning does not have to feel like punishment. You can connect a difficult habit with something you enjoy. For example, you might listen to English while taking a walk. You might study vocabulary using topics you like. You might practice speaking by discussing your favorite games, books, or hobbies. The more meaningful the activity feels, the easier it can become to repeat. Another useful method is to give yourself a small reward after completing a task. The reward does not need to be something huge. It could simply be a short break, a favorite activity, or the satisfaction of checking something off your list. However, the best reward may eventually become the feeling of improvement itself. At first, you may practice because you want a reward. Later, you may practice because you enjoy being better. That is a powerful change. When the activity itself becomes satisfying, motivation becomes less dependent on external rewards. You begin to think, I want to do this.
And that is when learning can become much more enjoyable.
Why immediate rewards are powerful. Imagine two choices. Choice A gives you something enjoyable right now.
Choice B gives you something much more valuable, but only after 6 months of effort.
Which one does your brain prefer? Often, the immediate reward feels more attractive.
This is known as delayed gratification, choosing a larger future benefit instead of a smaller immediate one.
Studying is a classic example.
You can study for an hour and become closer to your future goal, or you can watch entertaining videos right now.
The video gives an immediate reward. The exam result is far away. This creates a competition between the present and the future. Our brains are not always good at valuing distant rewards. A future benefit can feel less real than something happening right now.
That is why people sometimes make choices they know are not helpful.
They are not necessarily lazy.
They are responding to a powerful psychological difference between immediate and delayed rewards.
So how can we make long-term goals more motivating? One strategy is to make progress visible.
Instead of thinking, my exam is in 3 months, think, today I completed 1 study session. You can use a calendar, checklist, notebook, or progress chart. Each completed action becomes a small immediate reward. The future goal remains important, but you also create rewards along the way.
Another strategy is to make distractions slightly harder to access. If entertainment is available with one click, it will always compete strongly for your attention.
If you remove unnecessary notifications or place your phone farther away while studying, you reduce the number of immediate rewards available.
You are not fighting your brain. You are designing your environment to help your brain. The endless scroll problem. Have you ever opened an app for 5 minutes and then discovered that 30 minutes have disappeared? This happens because many digital platforms are designed around continuous attention. There is always another video, another post, another notification, another recommendation. You do not need to decide what comes next. The system decides for you. This creates a very easy form of entertainment. Compare that with reading a difficult textbook. The textbook requires effort. You have to concentrate, understand ideas, and sometimes reread sentences. The digital feed asks much less from you. This does not mean every use of technology is harmful.
Technology can help us learn, communicate, create, and solve problems.
The important question is how we use it.
If entertainment becomes the easiest activity in your environment, difficult tasks may feel even harder by comparison. One solution is to create periods of focused work where distractions are reduced.
For example, you could decide that for 25 minutes, you will focus only on one task. After that, you can take a short break. The goal is not to hate entertainment. The goal is to stop entertainment from controlling your attention. Your attention is limited. Every day, you choose where to spend it. If you constantly give it to small, immediate rewards, you may have less attention available for larger goals. The good news is that attention can be trained. The more often you practice focusing on one thing, the more comfortable focused work can become.
At first, 20 minutes may feel difficult.
Later, it may feel normal. And eventually, you may discover that deep concentration itself can become satisfying. The motivation trap. There is a strange trap that many people experience.
They spend a lot of time looking for motivation instead of doing the activity they want motivation for.
They watch motivational videos. They read motivational quotes.
They create perfect schedules.
They buy new notebooks. They organize their desk. Then they feel ready. But they still do not begin. Why? Because preparation can sometimes become a form of procrastination. Of course, planning is useful. But planning should eventually lead to action. Imagine someone who wants to become a better runner.
They spend weeks researching shoes, watching training videos, and creating the perfect schedule.
But they never actually run. The problem is not a lack of information. It is a lack of action. Motivation can become another form of entertainment when we only consume inspiring content without changing our behavior. Real motivation is connected to movement. You do something. You see a result. The result gives you information. You adjust. Then you do it again. This cycle is much more powerful than simply thinking about success. So if you feel stuck, try this.
Stop searching for the perfect motivational feeling.
Choose one useful action. Make it small. Start now. You may not feel excited. That is okay. Action does not require excitement. Sometimes you become motivated after you begin. The first step may feel ordinary, but ordinary steps repeated consistently can create extraordinary results. Rewards that actually help. Rewards can increase motivation, but not every reward is equally useful. A reward should support the behavior you want to repeat.
Imagine you study for 30 minutes and then reward yourself by doing something that makes it extremely difficult to return to studying.
You might accidentally train yourself to avoid the next session.
A better reward could be a short break, a walk, a favorite activity for a limited time, or simply recognizing the work you completed.
Another powerful reward is visible progress.
Imagine completing a difficult chapter and then marking it as finished.
That small action creates a sense of completion. Humans often enjoy completing things. This is why checklists can be surprisingly motivating.
You can also divide large projects into stages. Instead of finish the entire project, create steps such as:
choose the topic, research the main ideas, write the first section, review the work, complete the final version. Each completed stage gives you evidence that you are moving forward. There is another important idea: rewards should not always be external.
If you learn a new English expression and suddenly understand it in a movie, that moment can become a reward. If you solve a difficult mathematics problem without help, that feeling can become a reward. If you understand something today that confused you last month, that is a reward.
Over time, these internal rewards can become stronger. You stop asking, "What will I get for doing this?" Instead, you begin thinking, "I like seeing myself improve."
That shift can create a much more sustainable form of motivation.
Why failure can destroy motivation. Failure can be emotionally powerful. You study hard and receive a disappointing grade. You practice a skill and make the same mistake again. You work on a project and realize that your first idea does not work. In these moments, it is easy to think, maybe I am just not good at this. That thought can quickly reduce motivation. But failure does not always tell us that we are incapable. Often, it tells us that our current method is not producing the result we want. Imagine trying to open a locked door with the wrong key. The door does not open. Does that mean you can never enter the room? No. It means you need a different key. The same idea applies to learning. If you fail a test, the useful question is not only, why did I fail? Ask, what specifically caused the problem? Did you misunderstand the questions? Did you forget important information? Did you study the wrong material? Did you run out of time? Each answer gives you information. Failure becomes more useful when it becomes specific. Instead of saying, I am bad at English, say, I have difficulty understanding fast conversations. That is a problem you can work on. Instead of saying, I am terrible at mathematics, say, I make mistakes when I use negative numbers. Again, that is specific. Specific problems are easier to solve. This is why successful learning requires a healthy relationship with mistakes. Mistakes are not proof that improvement is impossible. They are information about what to improve next. The emotional side of motivation. Motivation is not purely logical. You may know exactly what you should do and still not want to do it. Why? Because emotions influence behavior. If you are stressed, tired, frustrated, or worried, even a simple task may feel difficult. This does not mean you should stop working whenever you feel uncomfortable. It means you should understand that your emotional state affects your ability to focus. Imagine trying to study after a very stressful day. You read the same paragraph 3 times and still cannot remember it. You might blame yourself. But perhaps your brain simply needs a short break. Motivation is not about forcing yourself endlessly. Good performance requires recovery too. Sleep, rest, movement, and healthy routines can influence concentration and energy. There is also a difference between temporary discomfort and a real need to stop. Learning something difficult often feels uncomfortable. That is normal. But extreme exhaustion is not the same thing as productive effort. A useful question is, am I avoiding this because it is difficult, or do I genuinely need a break? Sometimes the answer is difficulty. Sometimes the answer is rest. Learning to recognize the difference is an important part of self-management. You do not need to feel perfect before working. You simply need to understand what your current state requires. Sometimes you need discipline. Sometimes you need encouragement. Sometimes you need a short break. And sometimes you need to change your strategy. Motivation becomes more powerful when you understand yourself rather than simply fighting yourself. The growth mindset. Imagine 2 students receive the same difficult test. The first student thinks, I am not smart enough for this. The second thinks, I do not understand this yet. The difference is one small word, yet. The second student sees ability as something that can develop. This idea is often called a growth mindset. A growth mindset does not mean believing that you can instantly become great at anything. It means recognizing that skills can improve through practice, strategies, feedback, and time. This can change motivation. If you believe your ability is fixed, difficulty can feel like evidence that you should stop. If you believe ability can grow, difficulty can become a reason to continue. Imagine learning to speak English. At first, you may make many grammar mistakes. If you think, I will never speak correctly, every mistake becomes painful. But if you think, I am still learning, mistakes become part of the process. The same applies to sports, mathematics, music, programming, and countless other skills. However, a growth mindset is not simply saying positive things to yourself. You still need effective action. You need practice. You need feedback. You need to change strategies when something does not work. Believing that improvement is possible is the beginning, not the entire process. The most useful mindset may be, I do not know how to do this yet, but I can learn. That sentence leaves the door open. And sometimes, keeping the door open is enough to continue. Comparing yourself with others.
Comparison can be a powerful source of motivation, but it can also destroy it.
Imagine seeing someone who is already excellent at a skill you have just started learning. You might think, why am I so far behind? But you are comparing your beginning with someone else's progress. You do not see all the hours they practiced. You do not see their mistakes. You do not see the years that came before the result you are looking at. You only see the final picture. This can create an unfair comparison. A healthier approach is to compare yourself with your previous self. Ask, what can I do now that I could not do before? What do I understand now that was confusing last year? What mistake do I make less often? These questions focus attention on progress. Of course, other people can still be useful examples. You can learn from someone who is better than you. Their skills can show you what is possible.
The difference is whether comparison becomes information or judgment.
Information says, they can do this. What can I learn from them?
Judgment says, they are better, so I am not good enough.
The first creates curiosity. The second creates discouragement.
Motivation grows better through curiosity than through constant self-criticism. Your journey does not need to look like anyone else's.
Everyone starts from a different place. The important question is not, am I ahead of everyone? It is, am I moving forward? Motivation as a system. After exploring the science and psychology of motivation, we can finally ask the biggest question. How can we use all of this in real life? The answer is not one secret trick. Motivation works more like a system. Your goals give you direction. Small actions make starting easier. Habits make consistency easier. Progress creates evidence that your effort is working. Rewards encourage repetition.
A supportive environment reduces distractions.
A healthy attitude toward failure helps you continue. And rest gives your brain the chance to recover. Think of motivation like a machine with several parts. If one part is weak, the whole system may become harder to operate. For example, you may have a clear goal but no routine. Or you may have a good routine but an environment full of distractions. Or you may work hard but never notice your progress. Improving the system can be more effective than simply trying to feel motivated. Start with one goal. Make it specific. Break it into small actions. Choose a regular time or situation for those actions. Make the environment support you. Track your progress. Expect difficult days. When you fail, learn from the result instead of using it as a reason to stop. And remember why the goal matters to you. Most importantly, do not expect motivation to feel the same every day. Some days will be exciting. Some days will be boring. Some days will be difficult. That is normal. The goal is not to become motivated forever. The goal is to build a life in which useful actions can continue even when motivation changes. Imagine looking back after 1 year. You may not remember every individual study session. You may not remember every page you read or every mistake you made. But those small actions may have changed what you can do. That is the real science of motivation. It is not about waiting for a powerful feeling. It is about understanding how your brain works, creating conditions that support action, and taking the next useful step. So, the next time you say, I am not motivated, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what is one small thing I can do right now? Then do it. Because sometimes motivation does not come before the action. Sometimes, motivation is created by the action itself. And that's the end of today's listening practice. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Keep practicing your English every day. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more listening practice. See you in the next video. Goodbye.